What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the BLU Bold N2 and the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G. Now before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing and availability. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the BLU Bold N2, we're getting a 6.6-inch AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 390, an aspect ratio of 19.5 by 9, and a 90.9% screen-to-body ratio. So definitely some nice thin bezels here, and overall this phone has a really cool premium design that you really don't see every day in a mid-range phone. With the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch 90Hz PLS TFT display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 270, an aspect ratio of 20 by 9, and an 81.1% screen-to-body ratio. So in general, between the two, I do think the BLU Bold N2 does have a better display overall, but the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G does have a couple advantages. With the 90Hz refresh rate versus a standard 60Hz, the movement on the screen with the A13 5G is going to be a little bit faster and smoother, so if you're doing something like watching a video or playing a game with a lot of motion on the screen, you are going to get a slightly better experience in that regard, and when you're just using the phone overall, it's going to feel a little bit more premium. In addition to this, with an aspect ratio of 20 by 9 versus 19.5 by 9, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G has a slightly taller and more narrow form factor, so if you're doing something like watching a video in landscape mode, for example, you're going to get a more immersive experience, and if you're doing something like reading an article or using social media, you're going to get a better scrolling experience as well. But that being said, those differences are really subtle in this case, whereas with the BLU Bold N2, having an AMOLED display is a huge advantage. With an AMOLED display, the BLU Bold N2 is going to have much better looking colors, better brightness, and just a higher quality image in general. In addition to this, the viewing angles are also a lot better with the BLU Bold N2, so whether you're outside in the sun, or really in any setting overall, the BLU Bold N2 is going to be a lot easier to see than the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G. So again, in general, while the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G doesn't really have a bad display for what it is, and it does even have a couple slight advantages, if you're consuming a lot of content and you want a phone with a really nice display, the BLU Bold N2 will have the overall advantage here. Now for storage, the BLU Bold N2 is getting 256GB of internal storage with no microSD card expansion, and the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G is getting 64GB, and the A13 5G does have microSD card expansion. Now on one hand, it is too bad the BLU Bold N2 doesn't have microSD card expansion, but honestly it has so much more storage than the A13 5G already that you would need a pretty big microSD card to make up the difference. And in general, if you're a power user and you have a lot of apps and stuff like that, having more internal storage is just better. So if storage is an important factor for you, then I would say the BLU Bold N2 will have an advantage. But if you're more of a light user, if you don't really have a ton of apps and you just have photos and videos and stuff like that, then the A13 5G will at least be okay. Now for security features, both phones do have fingerprint scanners. With the BLU Bold N2, it's right here in the display, and with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, it's right here on the power key. And aside from the fingerprint scanners, both phones also have face unlock as well. But with that being said, starting with the BLU Bold N2, let's give these fingerprint scanners a try and see how well they work. There we go, one more time. And there we go. Moving on to the A13 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, both fingerprint scanners were real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have face unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the BLU Bold N2, we got a 16 megapixel front facing camera, then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, the BLU Bold N2 has a max recording quality of 2K in the rear camera and 1080p in the front. With the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we got a 5 megapixel front facing camera, then on the back we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we got a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. So as far as features go, the BLU Bold N2 does have a significant advantage here, since this phone does have an ultra wide camera, whereas the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G only has a macro camera. In addition to this, when it comes to video, the BLU Bold N2 can record in 2K, whereas again the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G maxes out at 1080p. Now in my opinion, this isn't really that much of an advantage. I feel like for most people, if you're going to be recording in a higher quality than 1080p, you might as well just go to 4K, but all the same, I feel like the video quality with the BLU Bold N2, even at 1080p, is still better. So if you are recording a lot of videos, definitely keep this in mind. As far as the photo quality goes, honestly, neither of these phones are really amazing per se, but I do think the BLU Bold N2 has slightly better quality. So again, if you're taking a lot of photos and that's really a priority for you, I would say the BLU Bold N2 will be a better choice, but if you're more of a casual camera camera user and you just want a camera that works and isn't terrible, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G will be perfectly fine. As far as RAM and processor go, the BLU Bold N2 is getting 8GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 810 processor. The Samsung Galaxy A13 5G is getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700. And in case you're wondering, yes, the BLU Bold 2 is still a 5G phone as well, so both of these phones do have 5G connectivity. Now I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of them, and with the BLU Bold N2, we're getting a single core score of 586 and a multi-core score of 1685. With the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we're getting a single core score of 460 and a multi-core score of 1099. So as you can see here, there is a bit of a difference, and in my experience, while the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G isn't exactly slow, the BLU Bold N2 is going to have much better performance, so if you're on your phone a lot, you will get a better experience with the BLU Bold N2. But that being said, if you're more of a light user and you're really just doing basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming stuff like videos and music and that kind of thing, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, while not being quite as fast as the BLU Bold N2, is still going to get the job done. But that being said, I do recommend running this test on your current phone and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of which phone might be a more appropriate upgrade for you. You might find that while the BLU Bold 2 is the faster phone here, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G might be a good enough upgrade already. Now as far as the battery goes, with the BLU Bold N2, we're getting a 4200 mAh battery that supports 30W fast charging, and with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15W fast charging. So while the BLU Bold N2 does have an advantage in charging speed, at least if you have a strong enough fast charger, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G has a significantly larger battery, and when it comes to battery specs, for most people, this is probably going to be the more important factor here. So if the battery is more of a priority for you, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G is going to be a better choice here. But that being said, if you're not too concerned about the battery and you just want a phone that's not going to die every 10 minutes, the BLU Bold N2 is still going to be okay, and the 30W fast charging definitely doesn't hurt either. Another thing to keep in mind here is that with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, we are getting NFC, so if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G will be the way to go, because unfortunately with the BLU Bold N2, this phone does not have NFC. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, I feel like the BLU Bold N2 does have most of the advantages here. First of all, the display is better, with an AMOLED display and a 1080p resolution versus only 720p, while the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, again, doesn't really have a bad display. The image on the BLU Bold N2 is going to be so much better, so if you're consuming a lot of content, like watching videos, playing games, looking at photos, stuff like that, you're going to get a much better experience with the BLU Bold N2. In addition to this, with 256GB of internal storage versus only 64 with the A13 5G, the BLU Bold N2 also has a lot more space on here, so if you're more of a power user, if you have a bunch of apps and stuff like that, the BLU Bold N2 is definitely going to be a great choice. In addition to this, the BLU Bold N2 also has a better camera, with better photo quality in general, as well as an ultra-wide camera, whereas again, the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, there's only a macro camera here. So if you're taking a lot of photos and you want a wider variety of camera features, this is definitely something to keep in mind. And aside from this, the BLU Bold N2 does have much better performance, so if you're going to be doing more activities like mobile gaming for example, or you're just going to be on your phone a lot, you are going to get a better experience overall with the BLU Bold N2. But that being said, with the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, this phone does have a much larger battery at 5000 mAh versus only 4200, and it does have NFC, whereas again, the BLU Bold N2 doesn't. So if you want a larger battery with better life and longevity, and you like to use tap and pay, then the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G is not going to be a bad choice either. But this concludes my comparison between the BLU Bold N2 and the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing and availability, because this is always changing. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Cleepus Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.